Hello everyone, welcome to Gateway to Civil Services. As we have already mentioned, we will be starting polity lectures from Lakshmi Kant. So in that regard, this is our first series, first video of that. We'll be discussing today the first chapter, historical background. Okay, the chapter is not very lengthy, but we'll be making multiple videos because in one video we'll be covering only one or two acts maximum, maybe one act or maybe two acts. Okay, so let's start without wasting much time. If we talk about the political structure and the political system that exists today, it is not a random kind of thing. It has evolved since several number of years, and if we talk about the background, we'll try to identify its evolution since 1600 when British East India Company came to India. At that time, it came to India only for doing trading. Okay? But in 1765, they thought ki, to plunder the wealth of India better and to do trading better in India, they need some kind of rights. So for that sake, they have obtained Diwani rights. ठीक है. अच्छा, दीवानी राइट्स क्या होते हैं? What is दीवानी राइट्स? दीवानी राइट्स is a right regarding two particular thing. That is, one is revenue and the other is civil justice. So the company demanded Diwani rights for the region of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa because they were concentrated in that area only for the sake of trade. At this time, their motto is not to administer or rule India, but their motto is to plunder the wealth of India better and to do trading better in that region. Okay. Then what happened? There emerged a particular event in 1858 when British Crown taken the direct control of Indian administration in his hands. Why? This happened just because of the Sepoy Mutiny. Sepoy Mutiny happened in 1857. Okay, it was a dispute of Indians with the East India Company. So British Crown came and said, "Ki I will solve the dispute. I will make the country's governance better, and I will provide the people of India with better governance and peace and harmony." And for that sake, British Crown taken the control of the country directly in its hands from the East India Company. So the British Crown ruled directly since 1858 till 1947. Okay. Then after 1947, what happened? In 1946, a Constituent Assembly was created because they thought that after independence, they will be having their own constitution. So for that sake, in 1946 only, a Constituent Assembly was instituted to create its own constitution. And constitution finally came into being on 26th January 1950. Okay. Now, it has witnessed that when January 26, 1950 witnessed its own constitution, we find that many of its features were common to the rule of British era, rule of East India Company. So for that sake, we will understand the company rule between 1773 to 1858 and the crown rule 1858 to 1947. Why? Just to understand how rules and regulations shaped, how political structure shaped during the time of both the East India Company rule and the crown rule, and how it has taken certain or most of the features during this era. Okay, so present political system, if we see, it has a profound features of the British era and the East India Company era. So it is very important to understand all those acts. Okay, so just a gist, just for the sake of gist, look at here. We have to study all this. Okay, in this video we will be completing one act, but just to present an overview कि what we have to study in this chapter. So historical background clear हो गया. 1600 they came as a trader. ठीक है, then East India Company had exclusive right of trading in under a charter granted by Queen Elizabeth I. ठीक है, that has happened 1600. Then timeline 1765, what happened? Diwani rights were granted in the region of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha over two things, revenue and civil justice. ठीक है, and that was the time where the East India Company started its career as a territorial power. Then in 1858, direct rule of British Crown in the wake of Sepoy Mutiny. So these are some timelines. We have already discussed it backdrop. Now we are just having a gist. Then if we come to 15 August 1947, independence of India, then Constituent Assembly was formed in 1946 for the sake of giving ourselves a constitution. Okay. Now 26 January 1950 comes and we got our constitution. Very nice. खुश हो जाइए, लेकिन इसके बाद ही तक नहीं होता, अभी हमें पढ़ना पड़ेगा कि सारी चीज़ें हुई कैसे. तो for that sake we will be dividing that impact of Britishers on Indian polity and constitution into two era. First era is under East India Company rule, that is between 1773 to 1858, and then the second era is under British Crown, that is between 1858 to 1947. Under British, not under British, sorry, under East India Company rule, that is company rule, we will be covering these acts, these many acts, because during their rule these many acts came into being, and under Crown rule these many acts came into being. So separately we will understand. So just have a look. During company rule we have Regulating Act 1773, Amending Act of 1781, Pitt's India Act 1784, Act of 1786, Charter Act of 1793, Charter Act of 1813, Charter Act of 1833, Charter Act of 1853. ठीक है, तो ये था ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी के टाइम पे जो एक्ट्स आए थे. नाउ ब्रिटिश क्राउन के टाइम पे क्या क्या एक्ट्स आए? गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858, इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1861, इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1892, इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1909, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1919, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 एंड इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस एक्ट 1947. ठीक है, तो ये इतना ही हमें कवर करना है इस चैप्टर में. ठीक है, ओनली दिस मच वी हैव टू कवर, नथिंग एल्स. तो जल्दी से वी विल बी स्टार्टिंग विद आवर फर्स्ट एक्ट, दैट वाज Features of Regulating Act of 1773. So this is a very important act. So first we'll understand point wise. So the most important point is, this is the act which designated the Governor of Bengal as the Governor General of Bengal, and it also created an executive council. Okay, before that only the Governor of Bengal was there, but this act had transformed this designation into Governor General of Bengal, from Governor of Bengal to Governor General of Bengal. And the speciality is that it has created a new council, that is the Executive Council, and in that council 4 members were admitted to assist the Governor General of Bengal. So if we talk about Governor of Bengal, there was only one person, Governor of Bengal. But this act changed the designation of Governor of Bengal into the Governor General of Bengal. ठीक है, and with that it has also created a council called Executive Council, and in that council 4 members were there to assist Governor General of Bengal. Note करिए difference. There was no such body of assistance for Governor of Bengal, but this act have facilitated the assistant members to the Governor General of Bengal, and that is the reason the designation has been changed. ठीक है, and Lord Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal. This is very important because questions are being asked directly. ठीक है, तो just note it. If you are making notes, just keep on making the important thing, keep on noting the important thing. Then if we talk about second thing, this was the act which made the governors of Bombay and Madras presidencies subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. Okay. Earlier what happened? Earlier these two presidencies were sovereign, but with the coming of this regulating act of 1773, these two presidencies lost its freedoms and they get subordinated to the Governor General of Bengal. So that is why we have said that centralization tendencies have started to begin emerge. Okay. Like it has said in the C point, it laid the foundation of central administration in India. So that is the reason it is said. Okay. Then the next important point which we need to keep in mind is this act created or established a Supreme Court at Calcutta in 1774. Okay, with one Chief Justice and 3 other judges. Right now we are having how many? 33 judges and 1 Chief Justice. That is 34 judges in total. So at that time, 1774, Supreme Court at Calcutta was created under the Regulating Act 1773, where it comprises 1 Chief Justice and 3 other judges, right? Then the next important feature of this act is it banned the private trading and its officials to take or accept bribes, and that is very acceptable and that is very applaudable of this act. We can give a kind of ethical dimension to this act with this point. Okay, first time it started giving importance to the ethical culture, ethical business of the company. So that is appreciable. And the next important point is this particular act strengthened the control of British government over the company. Why? How? It required the court of directors. Court of directors क्या होते थे? Court of directors were the governing body of the company. ठीक है? तो इसके पहले governing body was the whole soul. It does not have to report to anybody. But with the emergence of Regulating Act of 1773, now the Court of Directors, that is the governing body of the East India Company, have to report about its revenue, civil and military affairs in India to the British Crown, to the British government. Okay, so just note down the important points, because every point, all the 5 points are important and have asked in UPSC, PCS and state PCS. So just you have to learn it by heart. Very important. Okay. Next is Amending Act of 1781. So this act was, this act came just to rectify the defects of the Regulating Act of 1773. Nothing new. जो भी 1773 में चीज़ें रेक्टिफाई नहीं हो पाई थी या गलत रह गई थी या जिसको सुधार करना था, रिफॉर्म करना था 1773 को, तो अमेंडिंग एक्ट, इसीलिए अमेंडिंग बोला गया है. ठीक है, तो अमेंडिंग एक्ट ऑफ 1781, इट इज़ नॉट एन इंडिपेंडेंट एक्ट बट इट जस्ट रेक्टिफाइड द regulating act of 1773, and that is why this act is also known as the act of settlement. Correct? Now, features of this act. Number 1 is it exempted the Governor General and the Council from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court for the acts done by them in their official capacity, and also it exempted the servants of the company from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court for their official actions. मतलब ये है कि here they have strengthened the power of the Governor General and the power of the Supreme Court have diminished, right? Before that, Governor General and Council were required to be, present their case if they have done any wrongs in their official act to the Supreme Court. But now, after the coming up of this Amending Act of 1781, they are exempted. Now the Governor General and its council are free and they are not required anything done in their official capacity to the Supreme Court of the India. So that is the thing. Next we talk about, it also excluded the revenue matters and the matters arising in the collection of revenue from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So officials को भी it has excluded, and जो matters थे, revenue matters are very important matters at that time. So revenue matters को भी इन्होंने क्या कर दिया, they have excluded it from the jurisdiction of Supreme Court and given it to the jurisdiction of Governor General. So it can be seen, it can be concluded that the power of the Governor General and the Council have increased, but the power of the Supreme Court have diminished. Okay. Then next is, it provided that the Supreme Court was to have jurisdiction over all inhabitants of Calcutta. It also required the court to administer the personal laws of the defendants, that is the Hindu law and the Muslim law, according to their personal law. तो मतलब कि कैलकाटा का पूरे inhabitants का जो इश्यू था, जो भी jurisdiction था, वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के हाथ में था, but they are required to follow the personal laws of Hindus and the Mohammedans. ठीक है. Then next is, it laid down that appeals from the provincial courts could be taken to the Governor General and Council and not to the Supreme Court. ठीक है. तो before this act, whenever there is an appeal in the provincial courts, they go to the Supreme Court. But now, with the coming of this Amending Act 1781, what happened? Now the appeal goes directly to the Governor General and not to the Supreme Court, right? Then next is, it empowered the Governor General in Council to frame regulations for the provincial courts and councils. Now the provincial courts and regulations, the provincial courts and councils regulations are just framed by the Governor General in Council. So you can see from this act that it is largely about the expansion in the function of the Governor General and its council. So that is the crux. 1781 Amending Act have largely enhanced the capacity and the power of the Governor General and the council. And it can also be understood that the Supreme Court power and the jurisdiction have been diminished to a significant extent. So with this video we are ending here only. We will come with all the next acts like 1784, 1793, 1786 in the successive videos. So as we have said earlier, we will not be completing all the acts in a single video, just for the sake of we don't get bored, you don't get bored. So we'll be completing 1, 2 acts in particularly in one video. Okay, so we'll be bringing another video with the next 2 acts soon. Okay, thank you everyone.